Welcome to the solo training series from the Academy of Self-Defense. I'm Sensei Chris Leventis. This is the last technique in the first set, the 10th technique, and the second one where the student is expected to roll from an ukemi perspective. So the whip throw is interesting. The whip throw is another one that has a lot of coordination between upper body and lower body. I mean, they all do, but this one with the hand exchange, like the front wrist throw, there's a hand exchange that happens in the midst of all this movement and leading of the attacker or uke. So this tends to, the good thing is once a student gets it and they feel it, they do it correct one time, then they have it. It's just getting there sometimes takes a bit. So I'll try to break it down. Now what I do love about practicing this technique by myself, it's very much like a Tai Chi move. It can be very relaxing and you can do it almost as an exercise as well. Okay, so I'll pantomime it first from a few positions and then we'll talk about the details. This is a cross hand grip. So you can see what I mean, it almost being like Tai Chi. I did the first one extra slow so you can see that. It's a great way to practice this. Okay? So what's happening here? It's a cross hand grip. This is very much a leading technique. And the reason we call this the whip throw is because the very first movement, if I did this quickly, here, as I lead, I'm exaggerating, I'm not this tense, but I'm exaggerating that whip. This is where the uke feels this. You're being whipped forward into the throw. Okay, now, all the whip in the world will not help unless you're continuous with this. So you can't whip and then stop to figure out where the hand exchange is. This is what I was talking about earlier, where it's hard to learn it first. Because then all the energy you created, that lead, is gone, it's dissipated. Okay? So this is why you want to work this slow at first. With you fully being aware of the fact that there's a whipping motion in the beginning. There's two whipping motions, that's the first one. Okay? So, I drop the weight, get important because I'm getting to an extended hami, I want to get low, and I want to start that process in the beginning. This hand here comes back because I want to take this hand and come underneath. This is our fake guns, right? So the first fake gun comes underneath to the wrist. So this all happens at once. There's my first lead, my whip. Now watch, like the front wrist throw, this thumb, there's a hitchhiking motion. So as it passes my first patch, it begins to pass. This thumb comes up, the hand comes around and joins the other one in the same direction. It comes across the body. You should be at your center line when your jigatai is there. So this is jigatai first. And as I turn, there's my extension into the extended hami and I extend the arms forward. Okay? Now the last little whip, there's a little bit of a wrist lock at the end, right? So at the very end, there's a lock. Now don't confuse this with this kind of motion. I see that a lot from beginners. They take that whole thing literal, that I want to do this. It's not drawing a circle either. It can be that in the applications. We'll look at that. We'll look at that later. Okay, but it's here, and it's a very little small at the end. If you had a real whip, right? The first whipping motion is here, and at the very end, as you draw that whip back, the tail, the very end of the whip, gets that little sound. I'm not going to make it, right? I know you want me to. I'm not going to make that sound, but it's at that very end, that little tail. Okay, that's this part. So looking at it from this perspective, with this arm, cross hand grip, again, I drop. That fake gun comes underneath. I don't want to try to grab right away because you get tense, right? So if you do that whole fake gun principle, right, it leads you into that grip. So we're here. As I step, I get low. Thumb comes up. I start to turn across the body. As I lock the knee out, that's when this finishes. And at the very end, I'm here. Okay? From this side, watch jigatai, right? There's my jigatai, like the elbow chop. Jigatai, and lock into an extended hami. Okay, and from this perspective, drop. There's my grip. See that? Step back. As it passes the first patch, I begin the hand transition, step, as my knee locks out, there's my final lead and whip at the end. Okay? So again, there's a lot going on here. This is where the student is expected to, or the uke is expected to step and roll like the come along. Because if they don't do that, you're kind of just throwing them off and they're walking off. And you have to give up your technique, and it's not, you're not allowed, or you're not allowing yourself to go through the whole iteration of the technique. So that's why we have students roll. In the applications, I'm a big fan of this. In the beginning I wasn't, I'll be honest. But I'm a big fan of using that whip throw more as a circular motion and bringing right to the ground. Right? So if I'm here, let's say that was a backhand or overhead or push or whatever. As I'm here, instead of throwing them out, I can full tenkin and boom, right to the ground. And then you can come block out, block your arm out to an armbar or whatever. There's a lot of ways we can end that. I love doing that. In the beginning, I didn't like it, but I've appreciated it more over the years. That's the way I would use the whip throw in an application perspective. Or you can use I tell my students sometimes the whip throw is a transitionary technique, right? I start that whip to get people off balance, and then use that maybe to go to a come along or an arm bar or a handshake or something else, okay? Again, I'm getting ahead of myself like I always do, but I get excited with this stuff because there's so many possibilities once you break it down, okay? Now, from an ukeme perspective, I'm grabbing cross-handed, right side. So like the come along, chances are, if someone pulls you on this side, chances are, nothing's ever 100%, you're gonna step with this foot. I don't see anybody pulling you with this foot and you stepping with this one. It doesn't make any sense physically, right? So you use that to your advantage. So if they pull you, there's your first. Now the second step, as they continue to lead, all you're doing is stepping into your roll. That's it. Okay, so to this side, same thing. They step, 1, 2, into your roll. Okay, so that's the whip throw. We'll explore it a lot further down the road when I do some application series with this stuff. And I'll show you what I mean by using it as a transitionary technique. I'm a big fan of that. I'm also, like I said, a big fan of the takedown. All right, thank you. That's the last technique in the first set. That's the whip throw. I hope you enjoyed it. This is a solo training series from the Academy of Self-Defense. I'm Sensei Chris Leventis. Thank you.